Hey guys, good morning. Welcome to Valente Flowers. This morning I am planting my foxglove in this bed here, and I wanted to show you how I use the Hortnova netting to space out my plants. You'll also notice that when I'm planting my foxglove, I don't use any landscape fabric. I find that the landscape fabric just heats up a little bit too much for foxglove, and foxglove tends to like cooler temperatures. So no landscape fabric for the foxglove unless you absolutely need it. You know, your bed is, let's say, really unusually weedy, then go ahead and use it. But you can see this is the same netting. I've got the roll of it way back there, and I've just laid it down the 4-foot bed. And this is the same netting that I use for my sweet peas, the trellising. It's also the same netting that I float 18 inches above my beds just to support the stems as they're growing, so I get nice straight stems. So the same netting there, 4 feet wide, so it's the same width as my bed. It's perfect, and the squares are 6 inches, 6-inch squares. So planting the foxglove this morning, let's go in and take a closer look, and I'm gonna show you how I use the netting to organize my plantings into 3 different spacings. All right, so when I'm planting my foxglove here, you can see, so this is my 4-foot wide bed, and I've got my netting that's stretched across the bed, and it's going all the way down to the end there. And I plant my foxglove at 6-inch intervals, 6-inch spacing. The reason why I can kind of get away with that is because I only grow first-year flowering foxglove. I treat it like an annual, so it doesn't perennialize and it never gets really bulky. So this close spacing is actually just fine for foxglove. So I wanted to show you how I use this netting for 3 different types of spacing. You can see I've also run drip tape down this bed. Normally I would do it afterwards, but I just did it now. And so what I've done is I've put 1 transplant into every square, okay, and I would just continue this all the way up. I didn't just for this demo, but I'm going to be planting 1 transplant into every square, and that's going to give me a 6-inch spacing. The other thing I want to mention is when you're planting, you're going to want to loosen up this root ball a little before you plant them into the ground, just to give the transplants a little bit of a sign to know that, hey guys, you know what, you've got a new home, time to spread out those roots. The second type of spacing that you can do with this netting is something more like a 9-inch spacing. So this would be something bulkier, maybe like zinnias, for example, but I'm going to use foxglove here today just as my model. And so what you would do is you would plant 1 in every other square across the 4-foot bed, and then in the next row you would just stagger it, and you would put 1 in every other square. And then in the next row you would repeat what you've done in this row here, 1 in every other square, and then staggered. And then you would just repeat that pattern. And so then that gives you a 9-inch spacing, okay? If you just continue that all the way down the bed. Then the third type of spacing that I do is what is more like a 12-inch spacing. So this would be something for plants that are a little bit bulkier, like let's say scented geranium or celosia. And for that, you're almost just making like a square pattern. You're putting 1 in every other row, skip a row, and then you're going to continue that pattern, 1 in every other square, skip a row, 1 in every other square. And so then you would just continue that all the way down the bed, and then that gives you something similar to a 12-inch spacing for larger plants. Okay guys, so that is what approximately 1 tray's worth of foxglove planted at 6 inches looks like. So you can see I will eventually take this the netting away, and then I will just keep going all the way down this bed. I've got about 4 more trays that will take me to the end of this bed. Okay guys, so that is using your Hortnova netting for spacing out your plants. When I'm securing the netting down to the ground, I'm just using ground staples along the edges just to hold it down to the ground. But if you didn't have ground staples, you could, use some paving blocks or some stones just to hold it down. And then once the entire bed has been planted, I then go through and I lift the netting up, and then I can reuse the netting somewhere else. All right, guys, so that is spacing with your Hortnova netting. I hope you enjoyed that, and I will hopefully be back with another how-to demo.